Commander Sarah Chun stepped off the transport ship and into Kepler Station's main docking bay. The artificial gravity felt different from Earth's pull, and the air tasted recycled and metallic. Around her, dozens of alien species moved with purpose through the massive space station that served as the Galactic Defense Coalition's headquarters. She had been traveling for 3 weeks to get here, jumping through hyperspace gates that made her stomach turn inside out. But Earth Command had been clear in their orders. Humanity's survival depended on proving they belonged in this war against the machines. A tall, blue-skinned Krillian officer approached her. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he looked her up and down. "You are the human commander?" His voice carried doubt. "Commander Sarah Chun, Earth Defense Forces," she replied, standing straight despite being half his height. "I am Admiral Vexka. Follow me to the war room." The corridors of Kepler Station stretched for miles in every direction. Sarah saw species she had only read about in intelligence briefings. The insectoid Zentari clicked their mandibles as they walked past. The floating Altarians moved without legs, their energy bodies glowing softly. Each species had fought the hegemony for years before humans even knew aliens existed. The war room doors slid open to reveal a massive, holographic display showing the galaxy. Red markers indicated hegemony-controlled space, spreading like an infection across hundreds of star systems. Blue markers showed coalition territory, notably smaller and scattered. "We have lost 17 worlds in the past month," announced War Prime Thakzo, a Zentari whose blade arms gleamed under the lights. "The machines advance faster than we can respond." Admiral Vexka gestured to the display. "Our latest victory at Sigma 7 cost us 300,000 soldiers and 47 ships. But we held the system." Sarah studied the tactical breakdown appearing on smaller screens around the room. The coalition had indeed won, but the casualty reports made her stomach clench. 300,000 dead to hold one system? "The price of war," replied General Mortique, an Altarian whose energy form pulsed with authority. "The hegemony brings overwhelming force. We match it with our own. What about civilian casualties?" Sarah asked, scrolling through the reports. The room fell silent. War Prime Thakzol's mandibles clicked in what Sarah recognized as annoyance. "Civilians evacuate or they do not. Our duty is to engage the enemy. But the evacuation numbers here show only 60% made it out before the fighting started." Admiral Vexka turned his 4 eyes toward her. "Commander Chun, perhaps you do not understand. We face an enemy that calculates victory in mathematical terms. They bring 10 ships, we bring 10 ships. They bring 100, we bring 100. This is how wars are won." Sarah looked at the tactical displays again. Every coalition victory followed the same pattern. Massive fleets meeting in open space, trading destruction until one side retreated or died. The strategies looked like something from humanity's own past, when generals threw armies at each other across open fields. "The hegemony machines think in patterns," she said slowly. "They calculate expected responses and plan accordingly." "Correct," General Mortique replied. "They are very efficient at predicting our moves. So we keep giving them what they expect?" War Prime Thakzol's blades scraped together. "Human, you have fought the hegemony for less than 1 solar cycle. We have bled against them for 50 years. Do not presume to lecture us on warfare." Admiral Vexka raised a hand for silence. "The human commander will learn. For now, we have assignments." The holographic display shifted to show a small green world on the edge of coalition space. Haven 7. Agricultural world, 3 million inhabitants, minimal strategic value. Perfect for a new commander to gain experience. Sarah studied the planet's data. Haven 7 produced food for nearby systems, but had almost no military defenses. Intelligence suggested the hegemony would attack within the month as part of their systematic advance. What forces do I have? She asked. 2 frigates, 6 patrol craft, and the planet's security forces. Admiral Vexcar replied. Standard protocol is fighting retreat. Save the ships. Document enemy tactics for future reference. And the civilians? Will evacuate if they choose to, War Prime Thaxol said dismissively. Most farmers prefer to stay with their land. Admirable, but foolish. Sarah felt a cold anger building in her chest. The alien commanders spoke about 3 million lives as if they were acceptable losses in some grand equation. Their strategies had been failing for 50 years. Yet they continued the same approaches because tradition demanded it. I'll take the assignment, she said quietly. Excellent, Admiral Vexcar replied, not noticing the tone in her voice. Your transport leaves in 6 hours. Do not take unnecessary risks with coalition vessels. As the meeting dispersed, Sarah remained staring at Haven 7's data. 3 million farmers and their families, dismissed as insignificant by commanders who measured success in ships destroyed rather than lives saved. The hegemony was coming with their calculated destruction, expecting token resistance before claiming another world. But the machines had never faced a human commander who refused to play by their rules. Walking back toward her quarters, Sarah began forming plans that would have horrified the coalition leadership. If the enemy expected conventional resistance, she would give them something they could not calculate or predict. The lives of 3 million people depended on her willingness to throw out 50 years of failed military doctrine. The war was about to change. Whether the aliens liked it or not. Asterisk. The transport ship carrying Commander Sarah Chun dropped out of hyperspace near Haven 7. Through the viewport, she could see the blue and green world spinning peacefully below. No signs of the coming storm, just farms stretching across continents and cities scattered like small jewels. Incoming transmission from planet surface, announced the ship's pilot. A nervous young Krillian named Tekvi. Put it through. A weathered human face appeared on the communication screen. Commander Chun? I'm Director Mills, Haven 7 Colonial Authority. Thank God they sent someone. The orbital defense platforms are picking up massive hegemony signatures 3 days out. I'm coming down to the surface, Director. We need to talk. Haven 7's capital city of New Eden sat in the middle of vast agricultural plains. Sarah's shuttle landed at the small spaceport, where Director Mills waited with a group of worried-looking colonists. The air smelled of growing crops and earth. Nothing like the recycled atmosphere of military stations. Commander, we've started evacuation procedures, Mills said as they walked toward the colonial government building. But most people won't leave their farms. This is their home. Sarah looked across the endless fields of grain and vegetables. How many transport ships do you have? 12 civilian cargo haulers. Maybe enough for 300,000 people if we pack them tight. The rest? Mills shrugged helplessly at the government building. Sarah spread out tactical displays showing the approaching hegemony fleet. 15 heavy cruisers, 40 destroyers, and a command ship that looked like a metal mountain. Standard doctrine called for the coalition forces to engage in space, trade some damage, then retreat while the planet fell. Director, I need to know everything about your agricultural infrastructure. Every farm, every piece of machinery, every storage facility. I don't understand, Commander. The hegemony calculates threats based on military assets. Ships, weapons, soldiers. They're not programmed to evaluate threats from civilian resources. Mills called up detailed maps of Haven 7's agricultural networks. Thousands of automated farming machines, underground storage complexes, a planet-wide communication system for coordinating harvests. Sarah studied the data with growing excitement. These farming mechs, how are they controlled? Central computer network. We can reprogram them for different crops, different seasons, And the storage facilities? Built to withstand storms and preserve food for years. Some go pretty deep underground. Sarah turned to Captain Rodriguez, the commander of Haven 7's small security force. How fast can you modify farming equipment? Modify it how? Tractors into mobile weapons platforms. Harvesters into troop transports. Irrigation systems into communication networks the enemy can't detect. Rodriguez stared at her. Commander, that's not how wars are fought. No, it's not, Sarah agreed. That's why it's going to work. Over the next 2 days, Haven 7 transformed. The orbital defense platforms powered down and withdrew to minimum safe distance, making the planet appear defenseless. Meanwhile, Sarah coordinated with Mills and Rodriguez to implement what she called Operation Shepherd. Farming machines received new programming that turned them into remote-controlled weapons. Massive harvesters could carry armed civilians through underground tunnels between storage facilities. The planet's weather control satellites, normally used for rain distribution, became an invisible communication network. Asterisk, most importantly, Sarah met with groups of colonists who chose to stay. These weren't soldiers, just farmers and shopkeepers and teachers who refused to abandon their world. I won't lie to you, she told them. This is dangerous. The machines will expect us to fight them in space and lose. Instead, we're going to let them land and show them why attacking a human world was a mistake. An elderly farmer named Peterson raised his hand. Commander, my family's been working this soil for 3 generations. These machines want to take that away? That's exactly what they want. Then they're going to have to go through us first. Similar conversations happened across the planet. By the time the hegemony fleet arrived, Haven 7 looked like a defeated world waiting for occupation. The orbital defenses were gone. No ships rose to challenge the invaders, and communication networks appeared to be down. Sarah watched from a hidden command center, built inside a grain storage facility. The hegemony command ship deployed landing craft exactly as their tactical programs dictated. Overwhelming force, systematic occupation, minimal resistance expected. All units, this is Shepard Control. Sarah broadcast on the hidden agricultural network. Enemy forces are landing. Wait for my signal. The machine troops established landing zones and began deploying across the continents. Their movements followed predictable patterns, securing strategic points and expecting token human resistance that would collapse quickly. They had never encountered an entire planet that refused to surrender. Shepard Control to all units. The wolves are in the pen. Begin Operation Shepherd. Across Haven 7, the planet came alive. Farming machines emerged from underground storage, now armed with improvised weapons. Colonists who knew every road and field began striking at isolated enemy units, then vanishing back into the agricultural networks. The machines couldn't map. The hegemony had calculated for a conventional assault against military targets. They had not calculated for a world where every farm was a fortress and every farmer was a defender. From her command center, Sarah watched enemy forces stumble into chaos as their rigid programming failed to adapt to an enemy that refused to follow the rules of war. The hegemony forces had been on Haven 7 for 6 days, and their tactical algorithms were failing catastrophically. Sarah watched the enemy movement patterns from her hidden command center, buried deep beneath Peterson's grain storage facility. Shepard Control to Wolfpack 7. She spoke into the agricultural communication network. Enemy patrol moving through Sector 12. Recommend harvester intercept. Across the planet, the machines were learning that conquering Haven 7 meant fighting the world itself. Their programming expected resistance from military units in predictable formations. Instead, they faced farming equipment that appeared from underground tunnels, struck hard, and vanished before reinforcements arrived. Director Mills entered the command center carrying fresh intelligence reports. Commander, the enemy's trying to establish a new command post in New Eden, but the colonists there are making their lives difficult. Sarah smiled. How difficult? Well, the machines can't figure out why their supply convoys keep getting lost. Turns out the street signs keep changing direction during the night. The beauty of Operation Shepherd was its simplicity. The hegemony calculated threats based on military databases that didn't include farming equipment, civilian infrastructure, or human creativity. Their programming couldn't adapt when tractors became mobile artillery or when irrigation systems became hidden. Highways for resistance fighters. Incoming. Transmission from orbit, reported Rodriguez. From his monitoring station. It's Admiral Vexka. The Krillian commander's image appeared on their makeshift communication array, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly with agitation. Commander Chun, what is your status? Our sensors show the planet has fallen, but hegemony forces appear confused. Haven 7 remains under coalition control, Admiral. Impossible. Their entire fleet landed 6 days ago. How many casualties have you suffered? Sarah looked at the tactical display showing her forces. 43 wounded, 7 killed. Enemy casualties estimated at 60% and climbing. The silence from the communication channel lasted nearly a full minute. When Vexka spoke again, his voice carried disbelief. Commander, please clarify. You report 7 coalition deaths against a full hegemony assault force? Confirmed. The enemy is requesting reinforcements. That cannot be accurate. Before Sarah could respond, alerts began flashing across her tactical screens. Enemy communications were spiking, and their movement patterns were shifting toward full retreat. Shepard control to all units, Sarah broadcast. Enemy forces are withdrawing to their landing zones. Maintain pressure, but do not pursue into open ground. Across Haven 7, human defenders emerged from their agricultural fortresses to watch the impossible sight of hegemony troops retreating in disorder. The machines loaded onto their landing craft with mechanical efficiency, but their formations showed the digital equivalent of panic dot within hours. The entire hegemony fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving Haven 7 intact and free dot, the communication channel, crackled back to life. This time, War Prime Thaxol's blade arms were visible, clicking together in what Sarah recognized as extreme agitation. Human Commander, you will report to Kepler Station immediately. Your tactics require evaluation. Sarah looked around the command center at Mills, Rodriguez, and Peterson, who had insisted on staying to help coordinate the defense. I'll be there in 3 days, War Prime. The journey back to Kepler Station felt different from her first trip. Word of Haven 7 had spread through coalition space faster than hyperspace communications. When Sarah docked at the massive space station, she noticed aliens stopping their conversations to stare at her. The war room had been reconfigured with additional seating. Representatives from a dozen species filled chairs around the holographic display, all watching as Sarah entered. Admiral Vexka gestured to a seat at the center of the room. Commander Chun, announced General Mortique, his energy form pulsing with authority. You stand before this council to explain tactics that violate established military doctrine. War Prime Thaxol leaned forward, mandibles clicking. No world has ever repelled a full hegemony assault. Their tactical programs are considered perfect. Yet you claim victory with minimal losses. I don't claim victory, Sarah replied calmly. I achieved it by abandoning honor. Thaxol's blades scraped together. You hid among civilians like a scavenger. You used farming equipment as weapons. You turned an entire world into something the enemy couldn't calculate, Sarah finished. The hegemony's strength comes from their ability to predict our responses. They plan for conventional military resistance because that's what we've given them for 50 years. Admiral Vexka activated the holographic display, showing tactical breakdowns from recent battles. Our strategies have held 17 systems against machine advance. The cost has been acceptable. Acceptable to who? Sarah stood and gestured at the casualty reports floating in the air. 3 million dead at Sigma 7, 5 million at Telos Prime, 8 million at the Centauri Defense. When does the cost become unacceptable? War requires sacrifice, General Mortique stated. War requires victory, Sarah shot back. And victory means protecting the people you're fighting for, not just destroying the enemy. The debate continued for hours. Alien commanders who had fought the hegemony for decades argued that Sarah's methods were unrepeatable aberrations, that her success was due to luck rather than skill. They spoke of honor and tradition, of the proper way to conduct warfare between civilized species. Sarah listened to their arguments and felt the same cold anger that had driven her at Haven 7. These beings talked about warfare as if it were a formal dance, with rules that favored their enemy. They had been losing for 50 years and refused to change, because change meant abandoning concepts of honor that served no one except the machines, killing their people. The hegemony is launching simultaneous attacks on 5 major coalition worlds, announced Admiral Vexka, reading from an urgent communication, including Titan's Gate Fortress. War Prime Thakzol rose from his seat. We will deploy full battle fleets to each location. Traditional doctrine, overwhelming force. What about me? Sarah asked. Vex-Ka consulted his tactical boards. There is one minor target. New Geneva Research Colony. Take a small task force and defend it if possible. Sarah nodded slowly. Another throwaway assignment, another chance to prove that human warfare could save lives instead of just trading them. As the alien commanders dispersed to their traditional battles, she began planning something they would never expect. New Geneva sprawled across 3 continents of a world dedicated to scientific research. Unlike the farms of Haven 7, this colony housed universities, laboratories, and experimental facilities that push the boundaries of galactic knowledge. 2 million researchers, students, and support staff worked here, creating technologies that benefited the entire coalition. Sarah arrived with her small task force, 4 frigates, a dozen patrol craft, and a converted science vessel that served as her mobile command center. As her ships took position around the planet, she studied the enemy force approaching through hyperspace. The hegemony was bringing enough firepower to crack a fortress world. Clearly, they had learned something from Haven 7, though Sarah suspected they had learned the wrong lesson. All stations, this is Commander Chun, she broadcast to her small fleet. We're not here to trade shots with enemy battleships. We're here to protect 2 million lives and turn the hegemony's strength against itself. Dr. Elena Vasquez, New Geneva's director, met Sarah in the colony's main research center. The walls displayed holographic models of experiments in quantum mechanics, biotechnology, and energy manipulation. Commander, we're a research facility, not a military base. Most of our equipment is for theoretical physics, not warfare. Dr. Vasquez, show me your most advanced projects. They walked through laboratories filled with prototype technologies that wouldn't reach practical application for decades. Quantum communication arrays that could send messages instantly across the galaxy. Energy manipulation systems that could create localized gravity fields. Artificial intelligence research that explored consciousness itself. This quantum array, Sarah asked, stopping before a massive crystalline structure. Could it confuse enemy targeting systems? Theoretically, yes. But we've never tested it as a defensive system. And these gravity manipulators? Dr. Vasquez looked uncertain. Commander, these are research tools, not weapons. I'm not interested in weapons, Doctor. I'm interested in confusion. Over the next 18 hours, New Geneva transformed into something unprecedented in galactic warfare. The colony's research facilities became components of an elaborate deception system designed to exploit the hegemony's greatest weakness, their reliance on logical calculation. The quantum communication arrays, normally used for instantaneous data transmission, began broadcasting false sensor readings throughout the system. Enemy scanners would detect coalition ships that didn't exist, weapon signatures from empty space, and tactical formations that defied physics. Gravity manipulation experiments created localized distortions that made accurate targeting impossible. Energy research projects generated electromagnetic fields that interfered with machine communication networks. Most importantly, the colony's artificial intelligence research provided Sarah with something she had never had before: insight into how machine minds processed information. When the hegemony fleet dropped out of hyperspace, they faced something their tactical computers couldn't classify. Sensor readings showed impossible defensive configurations, weapons that violated known physics, and enemy forces that appeared and vanished according to no logical pattern. Shepard control to all units. Sarah broadcast from her command ship, hidden within New Geneva's orbital research platforms. Enemy forces are deploying standard assault formations, implementing confusion protocol. Across the system, the hegemony's advantage in firepower became meaningless when their targeting systems couldn't distinguish real threats from quantum phantoms. Their precise tactical formations fell apart as gravity distortions made navigation unpredictable. Most critically, their command and control networks began experiencing cascade failures as artificial intelligence systems fed them contradictory data. The machines had been programmed to process logical, consistent tactical information. When Sarah's defensive network fed them quantum uncertainty, gravitational impossibility, and electromagnetic chaos, their decision trees began collapsing. "Commander," reported her tactical officer, "enemy fleet is breaking formation. Multiple ships showing navigation errors." Sarah watched the hegemony forces struggle with an environment that refused to follow their calculated expectations. Some ships fired at targets that didn't exist. Others attempted maneuvers that gravity distortions made impossible. Their entire fleet began showing signs of systematic malfunction. "Implementing Shepard Protocol Phase 2, Sarah announced. "All civilian evacuation complete, beginning targeted strikes." Unlike at Haven 7, where colonists had fought alongside farming equipment, New Geneva's defense relied purely on confusion and misdirection. Sarah's small task force emerged from hiding among the research platforms and began precise strikes against enemy ships whose targeting systems had been compromised by quantum interference. The battle lasted 6 hours and ended with the complete withdrawal of hegemony forces that had never understood what they were fighting against. 3 days later, Sarah stood before the Galactic Senate on the Coalition capital world of Unity Prime. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the vast chamber, all listening as she explained how the war had fundamentally changed. For 50 years, this coalition has fought the hegemony using their rules. Sarah addressed the assembled delegates. "We met force with force, calculation with calculation, destruction with destruction. The result has been 50 years of defeat disguised as strategic withdrawal." Senator Kreville of the Altarian Republic rose from her energy platform. "Commander Chun, your methods at Haven 7 and New Geneva were successful, but can they be replicated across hundreds of worlds?" "Senator, they already have been." Sarah activated a holographic display showing the current war situation. Coalition forces have implemented asymmetric preservation protocols across 47 systems. Enemy advancement has stopped. Civilian casualties have dropped by 90%. The chamber erupted in discussion. War Prime Thixol's mandibles clicked in what Sarah had learned was grudging respect. Human Commander, your tactics preserve life at the expense of military honor. War Prime, honor that gets your people killed isn't honor. It's pride, and pride is something we can't afford against an enemy that thinks in mathematical terms. Admiral Vexcar stood on his platform, all four eyes focused on the tactical displays. Commander, what you propose changes the fundamental nature of warfare. Yes, it does, Sarah agreed. The question is whether we want to change or keep losing. The vote was not unanimous, but it was decisive. The Chum Protocols became official coalition doctrine, warfare principles that prioritize mission success through preservation rather than destruction, adaptability over rigid tradition, and protection of all sentient life as the highest strategic objective. 6 months later, Sarah received reports that the hegemony had requested negotiations. Their tactical computers could not calculate victory conditions against an enemy that refused to follow logical military doctrine. Standing on the observation deck of Kepler Station, Sarah looked out at stars that now represented free worlds instead of contested battlegrounds. Humanity had not won this war through superior firepower or advanced technology. They had won by remembering that the purpose of warfare was to protect life, not just defeat enemies. The galaxy would never fight the same way again. And perhaps, Sarah thought, that was humanity's greatest gift to the stars, the stubborn refusal to accept that some costs were acceptable. When people's lives hung in the balance, the rules of war had changed forever, written not in the language of destruction, but in the simple human insistence that every life was worth saving.